Hello, I'm Andrea. This is MyHomeBizTips. Welcome to the show today. We have an interview. We're going to be talking to somebody about self-love. Now, there's more to self-love than you would think because it's connected to your dreams and your wishes for your future, which is connected to setting goals, which is something we've been talking a lot about recently because that seems to be the big subject at the new year because of resolutions and all that kind of stuff. So for the new year, as part of inspiring us with our goals and our aspirations, figuring out what we really want and the dreams that we have in life, this is the perfect subject. And the other thing about this interview, particularly today, that really excites me is that it's cross-continent. We're talking to the delightful Katrine Horn, who is actually in France. Hello.
Hello, Andrea. And thank you so much for having me here today.
It's lovely to talk to you. You've had dinner, haven't you? It's quite late in the evening for you, isn't it?
Well, if you want to know all the details, we had just our evening soup, and actually we're having dessert after your show so that we can round off the evening in the perfect way.
That sounds lovely. I like the idea of dessert.
So do I.
Good for you. So you live in France, but you're not actually French.
No, I'm not French at all, actually. I was born in Denmark. And I moved to the UK when I was very young. And then I just sort of moved on to France, to Paris, actually, where I used to study the harp. So that's what brought me to France. It was that whole classical music scene and particularly the harp playing scene.
Amazing. I didn't know there was that Paris was important in the harp community, but then I'm not a harpist myself. Although I did live in Paris for a while. But it's an amazing place and there's all sorts of stuff going on. And I did go to a jazz club there once, New Morning or something, I think it's called. Something like that. Till the Morning.
It is a fabulous place. And obviously when you're a student, and I was studying the harp at the conservatory. So that was really, I think, a big gift, really, to be given that opportunity to be part of that whole scene and to experience the Parisian way of life. But being a student, it's okay being a student, but when you have to live there, well, then things become slightly more complicated because then you want a bigger flat, you want more space, you want the quiet, don't you? And that's not always possible.
Not always. No, that's quite right. I remember seeing lots of different flats before I found the one I lived in, and some of them were up umpteen flights of stairs and they didn't quite look safe, but they had these gorgeous windows that opened outwards and wonderful views and the Eiffel Tower, and I'd pinch myself and think, wow, am I really here? And of course, you lived in my hometown, London, which is fantastic.
I did. I went to music college in London when I was young. So I actually enjoyed London tremendously. And I found that so exciting. Obviously, I'm speaking about a long time ago. But actually, that was really my first dream come true, because imagine I was living in Denmark. I wanted to play the harp, and harp playing in Denmark wasn't really big when I was young. Like, it was difficult to find a teacher. So I just formed the desire that I wanted to go to music college in London. And of course, people told me, "You're crazy. You can't do that. That's just so unrealistic, Katrina." Well, being unrealistic or not, well, I just went and did it.
Katrine, I'm going to have to ask you to repeat that last bit because we had a bit of a glitch. So you were talking about harp playing in France, in Denmark, not being very big, and it was a dream that you wanted to pursue. And I want to talk a little bit about dreams. So I want to hear again what you said.
Yes, I was saying that it was a big dream of mine to be able to go to London and play the harp, to go to music college in London. But people were just telling me, but you're crazy, Katrina. You can't just up and go to London and play the harp in music college. I mean, who do you think you are, right? This is just so unrealistic. Like, get real. So that is typically the reaction you can expect from a lot of people when you talk about your dreams. And that is perhaps why we need to protect our dreams a little bit from these people who might not be able to really understand or really feel what your desire is.
Right, which brings us beautifully into how the young woman who followed her dream to music and was then a successful harpist now teaches people about self-love. Tell us a little bit about what you do.
Well, I'm an online life coach, and I assist women to see their beauty and their value in who they are rather than in what they do. Because I feel that we as women, we're so focused on having to deliver that we forget that actually we are good enough just as we are without doing anything.
Right. And how did that come out of playing the harp?
Wow, I don't know. I just always follow my desires. So my first desire was to go to London to music college. And as that worked out, I just formed a new desire, which was to go to Paris and play the harp. So I did that. And so I just had the impression that my desires were totally valid. And I just needed to follow my desires, and then everything would fall into place. Which it did for a long time. And then I formed the desire to say, well, I want to be normal. I want to settle down. I want to live in a house. I don't want to be traveling all the time, because when you're a musician, you have to travel, don't you? You can't just sit in your flat and play the harp. So right. I thought, okay, I'll just settle down and I'll become a teacher. Why not? So I became a teacher, and I became a teacher in what corresponds to middle school. And I met all these fabulous children. I tried to build up their self-confidence and have them feel really good about themselves. And then I would send them home to their families where the adults weren't necessarily feeling very good about themselves either. And so I found it very difficult to help the children without helping the parents. And I thought, how can I have the biggest impact here? Wouldn't it be much smarter of me to help the parents so that the parents will be happier people who will be better able to take care of their children? So that's really how I got into life coaching.
Right. That makes complete sense. And I find a lot of people come into coaching because they discovered something themselves, especially life coaching. They had a sort of a great revelation. And it sounds as though something like that happened with you too. It's a brilliant idea to support parents knowing that that will filter down into their children. It's very important. And I think at this time in our history as well, we seem to need more support than we normally do. And love is not something that seems to be everywhere. There seems to be less of it around at the moment than there has been normally. So anybody who's teaching about it and promoting it, I think, is doing something so, so valuable.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you so much. But I just think that love is a free resource, isn't it? I mean, it can be unlimited. So why start rationing it?
Yeah, I don't know whether people make a conscious decision to do that, do they? I mean, when I'm angry, I'm not thinking to myself, oh, I mustn't give too much love away because, you know, I'm just angry.
Yeah, of course. But then it could be a very a very good thing to be angry too. I mean, anger is not necessarily a bad emotion, is it? I mean, we associate our emotions with good things or bad things. So we think love is good and anger is bad. But sometimes anger is exactly the emotion that is called for, isn't it? I mean, if we see injustice, then we want to feel angry, don't we? We don't always want to be saying, oh, that's cool, right? So sometimes I think anger is the appropriate emotion to be feeling.
Good point. Good point. And I suppose that there are ways also that love doesn't always have a positive side either. For example, there are people who put up with all kinds of abuse because they're so attached in an unhealthy way to someone they love, for example. And that doesn't seem to me like a very healthy kind of love. Right. It seems also as though it comes from a point of no self-love. It's all that energy is put on someone else rather than themselves. So what you do is help people develop the love of themselves, which presumably could take them away from bad situations like that.
Well, obviously, if you love yourself unconditionally, you cannot tolerate being in a relationship with anybody who doesn't love you unconditionally too, right? Because our behaviors, everything we do, people pick up on that and they actually learn how you want to be treated from how you treat yourself. So we're just walking really adverts for ourselves and how we want to be treated. So if we don't treat ourselves well, we risk not being treated very well by other people. But if we're able to always treat ourselves with unconditional love, then that is what people will treat us with too, I believe.
And that works like that. It sounds so lovely.
It does. But I think what you just mentioned is so interesting, Andrea, because we sometimes want other people to meet our needs, don't we? So we want to sort of outsource love. We say, oh, I want him to love me. Yet if you're unable to love yourself, how can you expect somebody else to love you?
Right. Right. And yet you're the only person who knows you well enough to know how horrible you really are.
Yes, and we all are.
I shouldn't have said it like that. It's like I'm the only person who knows me well enough to know how bad I am. So how is it that I would then deserve to be loved unconditionally?
Yeah, so that is a super point to be making, because the thing is, we don't deserve love. It is ours, right? I mean, a baby being born, I know you've got a daughter, so imagine her being born and you telling her, well, now, dear, you really have to deserve my love. Right?
It doesn't happen at that stage.
No. So you love your daughter unconditionally, right? She doesn't have to do anything. She doesn't have to be beautiful. She doesn't have to be slim. She doesn't have to be intelligent or brilliant or good at sports. You just love her, don't you? As you would love your puppy or whatever pet you've got, you just love people and you don't really calculate it, do you? You don't think, oh, I think I'm going to fall in love with that person because he seems to be very good at playing tennis or whatever. Right? You fall in love with people unconditionally for who they are, not for what they're putting out there or what they're doing, right? For who they really are. So why don't we just do that for ourselves too? So that means warts and all. That means, okay, I'm not perfect, but nobody's perfect. And who cares about perfection anyway? That's boring, right? So just let me love myself to bits, because that doesn't take anything away from people. I mean, loving yourself is not being selfish, is it?
No.
You're not taking anything away. If you love yourself, there's only more love in the world, right? If you love yourself, you're experiencing love. It doesn't take anything away from other people. It doesn't start comparing you to other people. You're just you, loving you, as you would love your puppy, as you would love whatever, your croissants in the morning. That's just love. So why not have it all on you?
Very good point. Very, very good point.
So
Yeah,
obviously, it's easier said than done sometimes.
Sure. And I'm sure that's part of the work you do. It's helping people to, figure out ways of making that more possible in their lives. So as a musician, you're like a freelancer, aren't you? You have work when it's offered to you, and there are times when there isn't any work, and when there isn't any work, you're looking for more work. So it's kind of halfway between having a job, as it were, and being an entrepreneur. So what was it that made you decide to become an entrepreneur completely? I mean, you've talked about wanting stability and wanting a home, but you could have then got yourself a job in a school teaching music or something. But you became an entrepreneur.
Because that way we get to decide ourselves, don't we? So I just found that there were no jobs available for what I wanted to do. Like, there were no self-love coaches being advertised, so I just had to invent it myself. And I also wanted something where I was free, because freedom to me is really one of my biggest values. So I wanted to have the opportunity to be able to decide myself what my days look like. I wanted to set my own hours. I wanted also to take full responsibility, because when you're an entrepreneur, especially in the beginning, that's just you, right? For most of us, we don't start off with a whole office full of people helping us. So when we start off, there's just us. So all the mistakes, we can just come and lay them at our own door, can't we? I mean, there's nobody to blame. So I think that is really a helpful situation to be in, because it's just like having a mirror held up to yourself, and you can just really tell, like, so what do I need really to tweak here? And now, whose fault was that? Well, it's your fault, right? So being an entrepreneur has got tremendous possibilities, but it comes with tremendous responsibility too. And in the way of possibilities, you get to decide when you want to work, you get to decide where you want to work. So right now, for instance, you say I live in France, but I've actually got 2 houses here in France. So as in France right now, we're a little bit shut down. It's not locked down, but a little bit shut down. So we decided to go to the Alps, where we've got a chalet, and stay a month here. Why not? We can go skiing every afternoon. We can do whatever we like. So when we're tired of being here, then we can just go somewhere else. And I can take my business with me everywhere, because it is a service-based business. So I don't have any products that I sell that I have to lug around with me. So to me, that is just total freedom. And what could be better?
You're right. What could be better than total freedom? So are you a very well-structured and organized person?
That is, an understatement, I think. Because I was brought up with classical music, right? So that was practice from my earliest childhood. I can remember having to practice, right? So I'm just used to discipline, right? So I can discipline myself into anything, but do I want to? No. So actually, the challenge for me has been a little bit to undiscipline myself, and to then ask myself, well, what is it that you actually want? Because I could set up my day and get tons done, because I just get on with it. Okay, so I've got that. I just do it, right? But where is the joy in that? I want to be feeling the joy as I do it. So I have to step back and allow my feelings into the whole process. so that I can go to work feeling the joy of it, really wanting to, having the desire to work. That to me is really, that is gold. And I suppose to you too, Andrea.
Yes, it is. It is, but I don't have the self-discipline that I wish I had. So I find it a real struggle sometimes to just, do the things that I need to do. And sometimes there seem to be more of those than the things which are fun and joyous. So I'm battling with that sort of thing. But you said something very interesting. You mentioned joy, which takes us back to, and you talked about doing what you want to do, which takes us back a little bit to the idea of your dreams and your hopes for the future. So, I mean, the whole subject of this talk today, how is it that loving yourself better makes it easier to fulfill your wildest dreams?
I think that if you don't love yourself, you don't take your dreams seriously. I think you tell yourself, maybe I'm not worth traveling all the way to London for. Maybe I'm not good enough to do what I want. Or maybe I should just settle for something really reasonable. Right? So this is what many people do. They talk themselves into settling and they talk themselves into tolerating. Whereas if you love yourself, you know that you deserve to experience your desires. So nothing can stop you. You know it, right? So you will just assume that all your desires will come true, your dreams will come true, and so you will go after them. You will allow yourself to take all the steps that will lead you there, and you expect to succeed. Do you see the difference?
Yes, I do see the difference. That's absolutely fantastic. And that's a great place to be in terms of thinking, okay, I've been working for somebody or I've been freelance or whatever it is, and I now want to run my own business. So you did it and you applied that same philosophy. I want to run my own business. I deserve to run my own business. I am worth running my own business. So now what do I have to do to make it happen? Right?
Yeah. So we ask ourselves, what do I need to do? And that's when most people stop because they think, oh, there's so much I need to do. I don't know all that. Right? So if you are a self-lover, you just start. You just take the first step. And then you trust that your second step will be revealed to you. Right? So it's a building process. So you start off with zero expectations. You say, I will just do this today. Maybe I will just, I don't know, what could be the first step in setting up an online home business or getting your first shop at home or start selling whatever you want to do. Just take one tiny step and see what happens. Right? So we don't need to have it all figured out. And I think we beat ourselves up with thinking, oh, I don't know how to do this. I've never had a business. So instead of basing our future on what we want, our desires, we base it on our past, looking at what have I already achieved, and I would just take that as my measure for what I can achieve in the future. But that is really boring because if you've already done it, you don't want to be repeating it for the rest of your life into the future. So you want to be following your desires, because I believe that actually our desires, they lead us to our highest purpose and to the place where we can be of most use to the planet, really. So we desire something. If we allow ourselves to follow that desire, instead of basing ourselves on what we've achieved in the past, we can just say, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how, but I know the what. And if we know the what, we can just go and take one tiny baby step, right? We can get a business coach to help us through that. There's so many things we can do, but just get started without having it all figured out. And the self-lover will say, Katrina, okay, you don't know all the steps. That's okay, dear. Don't worry about it. Just go ahead and take one.
Just one step in the right direction. Because I think it's very, very important for people who have a desire to help their community and serve in some way, as you did with realizing that people don't know how to love themselves, even the adults. With me, when I realized that I know things about starting a business that a lot of people don't know, I think when people have that desire to serve and to help, it is absolutely imperative they do everything in their power to get their voice out, to be heard, because whatever it is that they can contribute, they're the only person that will contribute it in the way they can contribute it to the people who will be listening to them. I mean, I know other business gurus. I know other life coaches as well. I know other business coaches. I know other people who run businesses from home. Even if we appear to be doing the same thing, we do it in such a different way. There are billions of people on the planet, and the people who will come to you need you to be there. So if you have a burning desire to help, do not ever let that voice that says, well, I don't really know, and I don't know where to start, and well, the last thing I tried went wrong, so who's to say this is going to work? You know, that that's where the responsibility comes in a way, which you talked about earlier on as well, is the responsibility for the people that you'll help, and how really important it is to the world that you're there doing your thing.
Yeah, I think the why is so important, as you say, and only you can do what you can do. So maybe you can think, oh, there's somebody else doing it too, but that somebody else is not doing it, as you say, your way. So you are talking to people who can hear what you say. I'm talking here. Perhaps some people out there, they can't even hear what I'm saying. It's just like not resonating. So that is so important. And I think also, if you don't do it, if you've got that desire you talked about, Andrea, to help your community, if you don't do it, imagine what you're doing to yourself. You are in some ways negating yourself. You're saying, no, you want that, but you can't have it. I mean, how cruel is that?
Yeah, you wouldn't do it to someone else that you cared about. You wouldn't do it to a child. You wouldn't do it to your lover. You wouldn't, you know, to your parents. You just wouldn't speak that way. But we allow ourselves to treat ourselves really badly, which is quite interesting. So getting back to the business thing and the business side of you setting up a business, did you make any mistakes along the way?
Oh, I constantly am. And I don't mind. I mean, I just think it's part and parcel of the whole experience. So I make mistakes every day. I get things wrong every day. But I always show up imperfectly, but genuinely. And that is good enough for me.
Right. So what's the most important lesson you think you learned about running a business?
Not comparing yourself.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah.
Because when you start out, if you look at other, like when I started out, if I looked at other coaches, I would think, wow, they are so good. They've got so many people following them. They are just brilliant. But I'll be comparing my first day with their 10th year, right? So things that you can't compare. So
yes.
Comparing yourself is always useless, right? There'll always be somebody who's more intelligent, more beautiful than you. There'll always be somebody who's more richer than you, who's whatever more than you. So that is just totally uninteresting to do. And I just say, well, do it your way, because there's so much advice out there. And I think a good business coach like you allow people to find their way. And that is there's not one marketing thing you can do that will work, is there? I mean, it has to be in alignment with who you are. So you need a business coach who can reveal that to you or help you become aware of what that is for you. And then you have to allow yourself to do that, even though other people are doing things differently, right? They're not doing it the way you're doing it, but that doesn't mean that you're not doing it right. You're doing it exactly right. Also, when you start doing things and they're not working, you could start thinking, oh, I'm doing it wrong. But you're not. You're doing it exactly right. It's just not working yet. But I can't remember what the question was, so perhaps I'm not answering it.
We were talking about making mistakes and learning lessons. And you said the most important lesson that you learned was not to compare yourself to other people. And then you talked about when, excuse me, you talked about there are things that you might not know about running a business or whatever else it is. It could be anything, you know, learning the harp. So to just learn them, to find somebody that you can learn these things from.
And you can always just Google it.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that you can just, the answers are so much easier now than they used to be, because you can connect with anybody anywhere in the world, you know, at the end of just a few computer keys. It's actually mind-boggling sometimes when you think about it. So what was the best investment, do you think, that you made in your business?
My best investments have always been business coaching. So I invest in myself because I am my business. So I can't see anywhere else where I could get the same bang for the buck, or whatever the expression is. So I think everything I invest in myself, I mean, I will never lose it, will I? If I buy a new computer or whatever, well, it will, one day it won't be there anymore. But as long as I'm alive, I'll still be here. So everything I put into myself, it's just really the best investment possible.
I love the way you put that like that. I mean, I've heard the concept before, you know, investing in myself and so on, but I've never heard it described in quite such a clear way. It's kind of hit me like a sledgehammer in a way. You know, the computer will be gone, the car will be gone, the office, the, you know, whatever stuff you have, but you can't lose a skill that you've learnt. So if you learn skills, then you've just made yourself a completely different person, and you've given yourself abilities that'll be there forever. Yeah, that's a brilliant way of putting it. I've never thought of it like that. It's funny, isn't it, how sometimes the way things are phrased makes them really powerful. So we've talked a lot about the benefits of being an entrepreneur, and you know, you're a shining example of how it has made life joyful for you to be able to follow your dreams and to help other people. As we sort of close out the interview, I have another small question for you. What one piece of advice could you share with the audience today?
I think we need to develop a different relationship with failure.
Good point.
If you start your own business, you are bound to fail at some point. You cannot avoid failure. So why not embrace it? And when you do something, if you fail, just think, oh, wow, I failed. Okay, I failed once. Let me fail another time, and let me fail again, and let me fail again till I get it right. Because you will get it right. It's a question of trying enough times. It's like, I don't know, jumping. If you want to jump at something high, right? You might not succeed the first time, but if you keep at it, you keep at it, you keep at it, you will eventually jump over it. And the joy when you do succeed is so phenomenal, right? That we shouldn't really let failures stop us. We take failures to mean that we are a failure, but it just means that we did something that didn't work, right? It doesn't put us into questions as human beings. It's just that we had an action, we did something that didn't work out. So what? What if it was making a recipe? You wanted to cook a chicken and it went all wrong. You would just let that go, wouldn't you? So why in our businesses do we start thinking, oh, I did that wrong. That must mean that I'm a failure. Right? So you're bound, if you take any initiative in life, you're bound to meet with failure at one point. So what's the big deal, really? So I would advise you to cultivate your relationship with failure and just embrace it.
Very good point. Very good point. In fact, one of my business coaches in 2019 set a goal to fail 19 times. It was just an idea that she had, and she tried some pretty major projects that year, and I'm not sure whether she actually clocked up a full 19 failures, but she said that it did completely change the way she felt about when things didn't work out. And she was taking bigger risks because it had become kind of like a game. You know, not that she didn't put effort into it, but it was, okay, that didn't work. Ah, good. That's another lesson. Another failure is a word that has so many connotations, but it was, she wanted 19 fails that year, and it became a game, which is quite interesting. And you are absolutely correct to say that they shouldn't stop us down, slow us down. They shouldn't. Yeah. They shouldn't stop us dead in our tracks, which but so often
we shouldn't tolerate failing ahead of time either. We shouldn't be saying, I won't put in the effort, so if I fail, I know that it's because I didn't put in the effort, right? We need to go full out on everything, and then fail, and then say, oh wow, I failed, I'll do it differently next time. That is what we're after, not talking yourself out of success ahead of time, I think.
Yes, you're right, because wasn't there something about the light bulb took something like 10,000 iterations before it actually worked properly? Just imagine giving up at the 9,000th or the 8,000th. You know, and so many of us, I feel, give up after 100. So I've done that 100 times, it's not going to work.
Yeah. And how many times, Andrea, have you heard as a business coach, oh, I've tried everything?
Yes. Oh, yes, I've tried everything.
Well, try some more.
Sentence, because it can't possibly be true. I've tried everything I know to do, or I've tried everything I could think of, or I've tried everything that this person suggested. But we don't know everything. We can't, it's completely physically impossible to have tried everything, because if we had tried everything, then it would have happened, and it will happen, because when we have the viewpoint, let's try everything. You know, I have this conversation with my husband occasionally. I've lost my wallet. Okay, where did you look? Everywhere. Well, obviously can't be true, because if you had looked everywhere, you would have found it. So let's look in the places you haven't looked yet. Sometimes we have to go back to the same place and we find that it's lying underneath something that was put on top, so it's hidden. But it's the same kind of idea, isn't it? So I'm glad you brought that up. That's put a very interesting spin on it as well, because we can always find new ways of doing things, new ideas.
And I think also to stress the importance of keeping at it.
Yes, persistence.
Yeah, yes. Just keeping at it. Don't let anything mean anything. I mean, if you have a failure, don't make it mean something that it doesn't mean. Don't make it mean that it's impossible to succeed. Right? Just make it mean what it means. You failed this time. Next time, you might succeed,
Right. Yes. Because at some point you will. Whatever it is that you're doing, at some point you will. As long as you continue, you can't not get it right. Again, right is a very subjective term, but you cannot not do it to your satisfaction if you continue, if you keep pushing. And then what you said earlier on is actually really lovely. You said, if you don't continue to try so that you eventually get there, you miss out on that joyous feeling of having achieved something. And that would be a shame, wouldn't it? Because when you do get that little thing right, you do, you know, finish the essay when you're a student, or you do, you know, sew that dress or whatever it is, start that business, the feeling of satisfaction that you can have when you've achieved what you set out to achieve, you miss out on.
Well, it's self-expression, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you're not allowing yourself to express your full potential, really, which is always very, very sad. Like, you would never say that to your child, would you? Oh, please stop expressing your full potential. Please stop. Right? That just seems crazy. Why do we do that to ourselves, I wonder?
Interesting question. We've talked about a lot of really interesting things today. You have wonderful perspectives on some things and have said things I've heard before in a way that's made them really, really powerful, actually. And we're coming to the end of our interview, and I'd like you to tell us about the gift you've decided to offer the audience.
Well, I think you should just go on a trip to my website, which I believe will be up here. So it's katrinehorn.com. And as I'm a self-love activist, you will find a self-love ebook with tips and tools to cultivate self-love habits. So the idea is that we have these micro interventions that are so tiny that they're not difficult to make. So we actually do them, right? So these tiny moments throughout the day that you can start cultivating, and that will soon see you really transformed with the image you have of yourself and the love that you're able to bestow on that beautiful person that you really are. So that would be my first tip if you want to know more about self-love. There are lots of other freebies and tips and tools that you are very welcome to avail yourself of. Thank you.
And there is a link on our website as well, MyHomeBiz.tips, a little biography as well, and a picture, of course, and link to your gift as well. So there are plenty of places that we can find you. It's been delightful talking to you this morning.
It has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much, Andrea, and thank you for everything you're doing. This is so cool.
I appreciate that. I really do. Actually, before you go, you are one of the people that I brought into my life through my effort at doing something different to promote my business, because you came to me through one of the video series I did for Mama Millionaires, and then you joined my mailing list, and then you won a competition, actually. And I sent you a book, and then we got into talking. And when I found out about what you do, I suggested that you appear on the show. And that is the way that we help and support each other, because somebody will come to you through having been here with me, and somebody will come to me maybe because one of their dreams they discovered working with you was to run a business. And so we help and support each other. So here's evidence for the rest of you out there that I'm here also to help promote you, not only to get you started in a business, but also to promote you if you have one that is of value in some way to somebody and helps people and serves them. And I'd love to talk to you too. So Katrine, thank you again. It's been absolutely delightful, and we'll stay in touch and maybe have another conversation one day.
Oh, I hope so. And I hope you come and visit.
I will actually next time I'm in Europe. I've got other people in France I need to connect with as well that I've not seen for a while.
So see you soon.
Yes, thank you so much. Take care. That was Katrine Horn, interviewed by Andrea Kuchin on MyHomeBizTips. I look forward to seeing you here next week. Thank you. Bye-bye.